Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Gay with God podcast, a safe place for us to share our stories and support one another. How long did we know? What challenges did we face? Did we lose our faith? When did we find our way back home? Or are we still searching? The stories you hear on this podcast will melt your heart and strengthen your belief that in God, all things are possible, and you can be authentically gay with the God of your understanding. I am your host, Midge Noble, and I am very honored that you are here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gay with God podcast. I so appreciate you joining in and always being with me to support this podcast and letting other people know about it, because it is in that sharing of this podcast that other people who wouldn't have naturally found it have found it, and they are continuing to reach out to me and share their personal story of their search. And I'm just so honored to be a part of what they were seeking, and then they finally found it in this podcast. And I thank you, all subscribers and all sharers of this podcast, because you share in that delight that I feel. You share in giving another person a part of the light that you found in knowing that you can be gay with God. And you are sharing this podcast, which means other people are now finding that truth for themselves, and they can finally sigh a deep sigh of relief and know, oh, that's what that was all about. And then find their way to reclaim their faith if they choose to, and to know that they can be gay with God and stop worrying about all of the stories that have been told that aren't true about whether or not God values us and whether or not we were created to be who we are by God. And without giving away anybody's confidential information, I did want to share an outreach I received that was so poignant and so lovely, and at a place where I was really feeling very low that day. And this came, as we all know, as God moments often do, right at the right time, when someone chose to write me out of the blue and say that I am a light to them, and that it was because of someone encouraging them to listen to this podcast. This person said to me that it has already been a direct result of healing, and they are very encouraged by that. And I just love hearing that this podcast impacts other people, and that it impacts you guys in a way that has been healing, and that you have been able to reclaim your own authentic self and live your truth. And that is all I've ever wanted. And so I'm so excited that this podcast has been that for many of you out there that may have already told me that and have told me that, and for those of you who feel it. And I just am so glad that this podcast is doing that for those of you. And who knows who else needs it. So continue to share and write reviews if you can, and let other people know about this offering that I have for you guys. So today I'm asking the question, do you remember? And for some of us as we age, that answer might be, not really. But let's just go with it and say that you do. So do you remember what it was like before you knew about your right to be gay with God? Do you remember what it was like before you even knew that you were gay? And again, for some of you who knew very early on, way earlier than Midge and many of the other people I know, but some of you knew so early on, and you lived with a lot of hassle and devastation because of that, although I always thought it would be great to have known before the age of 30. But then I look back and think, woof, would I have survived my household if I did know earlier than I did? Would I have been safe enough to do that? Would I have been one of the ones that wound up in one of those horrible camps that, tried to convert me away from my authentic truth? So there as with everything, there are good and bad reasons for people to go through what they go through and when they go through it. So, but do you remember what that was like? Do you remember having that sense of feeling so different from everybody else? That everybody else was just at ease with themselves and they could just go and do and say and be and dress however they wanted to, and it still fit within some kind of a norm, and that they didn't have to cover things up. They didn't have to try to be something that they weren't. I was reading one of a former guest's memoir that is going to be released soon, and he was talking about, having to pretend to like football or having to pretend to be someone he wasn't, and that hypocrisy within him really, really devastated, his life and his mental health. Do you remember what it was like to feel so different and have absolutely no way of stopping that and not even understanding why you felt different or why you knew you were different? It was just such a confusing time, right? The sadness of that may come up for you right now is absolutely okay. You're grieving the part of you that always wanted to know. You're grieving the part of you that was damaged in the unknowing. You're grieving the part of you that felt so alone in knowing that you were different, but not being able to put your finger on it as to why. Do you remember searching for your worthiness? I don't know why that's always our default thing, but whenever we feel like we don't match up to other people, we're always the ones that we think are unworthy. We don't think it might be that somebody else was unworthy or that somebody else didn't measure up to us, but we sometimes always default to, I'm unworthy. I'm different. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to fix it. There's something wrong with me. And even though there was never anything wrong with you or me, that feeling of being different and then searching for your own worthiness is just so painful. It also just bleeds into every other facet of your life. So you're feeling unworthy because you don't know why you're different. And then you start to feel unworthy in every other aspect because that unworthiness feeling that you're now beginning to claim tells you, oh, well, if you're unworthy being you, then you have to be unworthy doing this job, or you have to be unworthy as a student, or you have to be unworthy as a son or a daughter, or a niece or a nephew or a grandchild. Nothing ever then looks like you're good at it, because down deep in your soul, you've said, all of me, all of this, all that I am is unworthy. So when we start to allow that to come in, it begins to shape everything. And do you remember that in that shaping of everything, you might have thought, I just feel left out of everything, because you couldn't join anything fully as your authentic self, which made you then feel left out. You didn't feel really like you were included in the family because the family, without really knowing why they were probably doing it, was kind of shunning you just a little bit and making it impossible for you to come to them and tell them the truth because you knew it was going to be wrong. You felt left out of being able to know your truth. You were feeling left out of having maybe a safe place to land. You were feeling left out from your spiritual life because it was already declared, if you went to church in one of those churches, that you would have been an abomination. So even if you didn't have an inkling, having that said to someone who in their soul knows who they are, but the soul hasn't really been able to tell you yet, you already feel that you're left out from over half of the world because you are different. And so you aren't worthy, and therefore you will always be left out of being in the in group, the God group, the chosen group, whatever it was that you were experiencing at that time. Do you remember that? Do you remember how you felt just so left out from everything and everyone that you really needed. Do you remember looking into your future and maybe seeing a fuzzy picture or maybe a non existent picture? I remember really never believing that I would live past 30, and I couldn't see a future. I could see getting to 30. I don't know why that number was in my head, but I could see getting to 30, and I couldn't see past that. It just seemed black and dark, and I couldn't see any other pictures. And now, looking back retrospectively, I know that 30 was the year that I came out to myself and then I could come out to others. But it was at that 30th year that I had to, and I describe this in my memoir, I had to die. I had to die to the unauthentic me and live in the new authentic me. I was rebirthed into knowing my truth. But do you remember trying to find your future and not really knowing how it's going to turn out? And this could be whether you already had an inkling and so you definitely didn't know what your future was going to be, or it looked really bleak, or maybe you were like me and you couldn't see a future because it definitely wasn't going to be anything that you expected. And I think it's probably wise sometimes that we don't know the future, because most of us wouldn't go. It's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to have to endure that. I don't want to survive that. And coming out can be an extremely painful, toxic, horrible, sometimes life-threatening event in our lives. And so sometimes when we look into that future, we didn't see it. And sometimes I'm feeling very grateful that I couldn't, because I don't know if I would have wanted to see all that was waiting for me and all that was about to happen. Do you remember feeling deep despair? And that deep despair for me started early on in the unknowing, because I did feel all of those things. I felt different. I felt this sense of worthlessness. I felt left out. I couldn't see my future, which then made me think, well, I don't I didn't know how to exist in all of that. And I did feel despair. I did feel very, very depressed for a very, very long time, which was discounted also by family. We don't get depressed. There's nothing wrong with you. You have nothing to be depressed about. Well, if you had known what I was going through, if I had known what I was going through, I might have been able to figure out, well, yeah, despair would have been an accurate feeling to feel. But even that was discounted. The feelings that we had, whatever they were often discounted or dismissed, or, there's no reason for you to feel that way, or why are you being so dramatic? Or, there was always those judgments related to how we felt, how we wanted to express ourselves, what direction we wanted to go. It was never something that was just embraced for most of us. I know some of you had wonderful parents who validated you, gave you the open space to explore and to be a part of who you needed to be and to practice out things. And I'm so grateful that some of us in this community had an easy time of it. And yet you still had to deal with religious trauma. You may still have to, have dealt with all the social stuff depending on where you lived. I'm sure there were some places that were more open and affirming, but even in the world today, as you grow up, you know that we're still fighting for our rights to stay on the books and not be at the whim of the pen of the presidency. And we still have to support each other's right to transition and to be who they are created to be within their own emotional makeup. And so it's not right. It's just not right that when we say that, yeah, I didn't know or I didn't remember really feeling despair, but looking back, yeah, I did feel despair. And I felt alone and different and left out and unworthy. And that impact on our emotional health and on our physical health is really compounded over and over and over through society and through church and through friends and family. It is a very difficult life to live as an authentic gay person. Anybody in the queer community can tell you that we've been through a battle. We've been through a personal battle. We've been through a familial battle. We go through social battles. And even now, when we are up against this very toxic rhetoric, and I just want to hold every Black person in the world, and I want to hold all the Haitian people and all the queer people, and I want to hold all of us, that are being disenfranchised, that are all of us who are being ignored by the right wing extremists who believe that we shouldn't exist. Of course, we feel despair, not just then, not just as we were trying to figure out and come out, but now, right this very minute, we often feel that despair coming over us with when can we finally have our rights and be protected as legal, authentic gay people in this country? I know we're not the only country that needs to get it together on that, and we're way further than other countries, but that doesn't mean we've done it yet. If we're still part of the rhetoric of what's wrong with the world, we do not have equal rights. And every single time there is some catastrophe or some kind of a political movement on our part, here they all come, and we're going to get bashed again. So, yes, I don't know if you remember feeling it back in the day, but I bet you're aware of it now, that there's a lot of fear and a lot of despair in the world today, just in general, not just for our queer community, but because of the ugliness and the hatefulness and the very toxic rhetoric that is being spewed every single day, multiple times a day, in the news, in those ads, in people's rallies. It's just been horrific. And if you saw the rally that Trump did in New York or got clips of that, I am just I don't even know how to put words to how I felt when I heard some of those remarks. And I felt physically sick to begin with, and I felt like my soul just squished. It just was in a puddle, I think, of tears. And I don't understand how anyone can hear that and still believe that this person is right for our country. And so we do feel despair. Do you remember seeing that first shard of light of knowingness? And what I'm talking about is when you first started to go, oh, I might be gay. And you might not have even said it in your head. You might have said something like, oh, I might be like that. or or I might be one of them. Or it might have just been, oh God, am I really? But do you remember that first shard of knowing when, even though it terrified you to even start to go there and you tried to pull it back, it was like that light was slipping and you tried to either pull it back or push it back, however you were seeing it, either inward or outward, but you didn't want to acknowledge it. Do you remember seeing that first shard of knowingness that your authentic self was going to take its place, its rightful place in your soul and in your heart and in your mind and in your vision of what the rest of your life was going to be? Did it terrify you? Did it nauseate you? Did it bring you a little bit closer to the aha moment of, oh, thank God, now I know what's been wrong with me? Nothing was wrong with me. Now I know why I felt different. Now I know why I didn't feel worthy because everybody was saying that people like me weren't worthy. Now I know why I felt left out of everybody else's world because I wasn't around any gay people that I knew of. And now I know why I couldn't see the future that I was supposed to be living based on who I thought I was, because it's not that person moving forward. And now I know why that despair has always been present, because when we don't live in the truth of who we are, our soul is crying. Our soul cries to be authentic. Our soul cries to be worthy and to be seen and to be accepted. That's why that shard of light was so dramatic, and however you acknowledged it, whether you tried to push it back or you invited it in and celebrated, that first shard of light was a monumental moment in your life. And since that shard of light entered your awareness, you then had your first little blip of hope. You began to believe that it was possible to be happy. You began believing that it was possible to have the life you always wanted in that future, to be out and proud and engaged in a community of people who were going to embrace you and love you and be there for you. Now, that doesn't mean that's how it all turned out. But that's what hope is for. Hope is to give you the possibility of something better, and then it's up to us to create that better. And some people just went right back into the closet. Some people shut it down. It was too much, and I don't need it. I don't want it. And they went back to the only community they knew, which was the very rigid, you're going to go to hell if you're like that, but if you're with us, you'll be okay. And there's nothing wrong with that as far as survival goes. What's sad about that is that now you're right back where you started, and that shard of light closed in again. Not that it won't open back up. How many people were like in and out and in and out and in and out until you felt safe enough to stay out? And that's okay too. That's why every one of our faith journeys and our coming out journeys are different. They may be similar, but they're all different based on time and location and support and our own desire to be authentic, and whether or not we are able to do it now or later or never. And that's why I really don't like it when people are outed, even though everybody being out helps our cause, for people to see how we are not freaks and we are good, loving citizens. But if somebody is outed and it wasn't their time and they're not safe to be out, it can devastate and destroy their life. So I'm really concerned always that no one gets outed, because we all need to make sure that we have that voice for ourselves and to tell our story when we're ready. Um, so just keep that in mind. I really don't want anybody to be hurt or to be destroyed any further than they already are by someone else taking their power away as to when they choose to be out. Do you remember what it was like before you knew that you were a child of the God of your understanding? Whether you assign yourself to God or not, do you know you are worthy and that you are loved by everything that is, by its source, by the divine light? And as somebody said to me the other day, the word they liked best was Ancient of Days. However you refer to the God of your understanding, whatever word you use, the bottom line is you deserve to be your authentic self. You were created to be your authentic self. And I want you to live into that fully, because you deserve to be free in your soul and in your heart and in your mind. Whether the people around you believe it or not, whether they've walked away, whether they said ugly things, you deserve to remember all of it and know that you came out the other side and that you are exactly who you are created to be. when you stand in your authenticity. May the God of all of our understandings hold us in this time of crisis, and may the God of our understanding let us feel the presence of that divine presence that will hold us and sustain us as we move forward in our fight for authenticity, freedom, and equality and equity, because we deserve it. My beloveds, may you walk in love and light and get to the other side by helping someone else along your way. And every time you share this podcast, that's exactly what you're doing. And I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please check out our Facebook group, Gay with God, where we do a monthly Zoom group entitled My Faith Journey. So whether you're questioning, whether you're having a struggle, whether you feel like you got it down and you want to share some wisdom, please come join us. We would love to hear from you. And we do lots of different things during that group. And so sometimes we're talking about how we're doing, what we need, what prayers we need to have for each other. And sometimes we're talking about a specific topic. You're always welcome to drop in and share or not share. Just find us on Facebook, Gay with God, and you will find the links to the My Faith Journey that we do each month. Also, if you've not heard about my memoir, Gay with God, Reclaiming My Faith, Honoring My Story, please check it out on Amazon or wherever you get books. You can also order it directly from me at gaywithgod.com. If you are listening to this podcast and are wondering and questioning whether you can be gay and be in a relationship with the God of your understanding, if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or not even sure if you are gay, God has always been within you. Even when you didn't know it, you have always been gay with God. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned to see how you can join the Gay with God community. And as always, you are loved. I want to invite you to become a part of the Gay with God community. How can you do that? Stay connected by messaging me your thoughts and comments in the comment section under the downloads of the show on the Gay with God show page. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and share so we can increase our community outreach and be a light to those who are struggling to claim their faith. Consider being a sponsor so I can highlight your service in our community. We are all worthy of respect and a relationship with the God of our understanding. I want to thank you in advance for supporting this podcast. Together, we as a community will keep this show visible and our community stronger. Deep gratitude to my friend Tim McClendon of Tim McClendon Music for allowing me to use an excerpt from Interlude 4, a song found on his CD entitled Sundance.